Welcome. I'm Christine Manning with the Wine Education Institute. Thank you for joining me on today's advanced tour of sparkling wine production. Today, we'll dive deep into the winemaking, geography, and legalities of sparkling wine. For centuries, bubbles were actually considered a fault. In the cold cellars of 17th century regions like Champagne, fermentation would often stall as winter temperatures fell, leaving unfermented sugar and dormant yeast. When spring arrived, the yeast woke up, restarted fermentation inside the sealed bottles, and the resulting CO2 often caused the glass to explode, earning it the nickname the devil's wine. Today, we've mastered this accident, and it has become one of the most technical and prestigious sections of the wine world. Let's dive into the bubbly world of sparkling wines. To produce high-quality sparkling wines, we have to start with specific grape types. We want grapes with naturally low sugar levels or those that may be harvested earlier because a second fermentation will add about 1.2 to 1.3% alcohol. High acid grapes help maintain freshness through the production and aging process. Where do we find such grapes? In cool climates, or climates that have cooling mitigating influences. Grapes are usually hand harvested as whole bunches to minimize damage and oxidation. In the Champagne region, where vineyard plots are so valuable, planting densities are maximized, and often hand harvesting is a necessity rather than a choice because tractors wouldn't fit down in between the vine rows. Gentle pressing is necessary to prevent the extraction of bitter tannins. We also need to press gently because black grapes like Pinot Noir are used frequently to make white sparkling wine. The EU even regulates details like press types and allowable amounts of pressure applied during pressing. First fermentation typically happens in temperature-controlled stainless steel to preserve pure fruit, though some houses still use oak for texture. The result is a base wine that is still, dry, high in acid, and light in flavor. This leads us to a very important step in winemaking, blending. Blending was born out of necessity in Champagne to bring balance to a wine, especially if you are growing grapes in cool regions or other outside of the world cool climate regions that might be tough for grapes to ripen. Blending can add complexity that a single varietal or single vintage might lack. Dom Pérignon, our famous monk, played an important role in blending and pressing techniques, although interestingly, his work was with still wines, not sparkling. Winemakers blend different grape varieties, vineyards, styles of base wine, and/or reserve wines from previous years to achieve a consistent house style. The majority of base wines will be used the same year they are harvested, but again, exceptions are made and some wines will be held in reserve for future use. Once we have our base wine, there are multiple options on how to make this wine sparkle. Choosing the method determines the wine's final style and price point. Let's look at our main methods, starting with our famous traditional method. Known as the traditional method or méthode traditionnelle or méthode champenoise, refer to how all Champagne and Cava is made. Other sparkling wines outside of these named regions may still use this method, and they will usually differentiate this on the labels with one of those terms just mentioned. Starting with the base wine, we add our liqueur de tirage, which is wine, sugar, yeast, and nutrients for the yeast. If clarifying agents are used, they would be added here. The bottle is then sealed like a crown cap, like you see on a soda bottle. During second fermentation, carbon dioxide dissolves into the wine, creating sparkle. Then comes yeast autolysis. As the yeast die, they break down into compounds and proteins that give off those famous bread, biscuit, and toast type flavors. This resting period can last anywhere from a few months to several years. Finally, the sediment is moved to the neck via riddling. Traditionally, this was done in a pupitre or an A-frame shaped wood, made famous by the widow Clicquot. Now it can be done by mechanized gyro pallets that handle hundreds of bottles at a time. Once that lees, aging, and riddling are complete, we have to get the sediment out of the bottle without losing our bubbles. So now we are going to disgorge our sparkling wine. We will dip the neck of a bottle into a freezing brine solution, which will trap the sediment in a plug of ice. When the crown cap is popped off, the internal pressure shoots the frozen plug out. The dosage stage is when the bottle is topped with the liqueur d'expedition, which determines the final sweetness. This dosage can include sugar in a liquid or powder form and our still wine. Sugar is not required at this point, as seen in Brut Zero or Brut Nature wines. Finally, there's a period of aging before the wine is released to the market. This step allows the dosage to integrate with the wine, and it encourages further flavor development. While most sparkling wines could be ready to drink at this stage, extra rest ensures the wine is integrated after the shock of disgorgement. This is a key differentiating factor for many champagne houses. A second method is the transfer method. This starts exactly like the traditional method, but departs at the point of riddling. Instead of rotating individual bottles, the new sparkling wines are emptied into a pressurized tank. The wine is filtered, dosage is added, and rebottled. Because this can be done at a larger scale and does not require as much labor, cost can be lower. Wines made via transfer method will often state bottle fermented on the label. These wines will still maintain autolytic characteristics. The Ancestral Method or old school way, you might see these labeled as pétillance naturelle or pet nat for short. Here, partially fermented wine is bottled with the yeast, and fermentation will finish inside, trapping the CO2. These wines will be cloudy and slightly effervescent because they skip that disgorgement step. Ancestral Method wines are usually dry to off-dry and lower alcohol and pressure levels than traditional or transfer method wines. The tank method is used for aromatic varieties like Glera or Riesling. The major distinction from tank and traditional methods is that second fermentation happens in a tank. This allows for much shorter contact time with the lees, preserving the fresh fruit and floral aromas of the base wine. So don't expect to see autolytic character on tank method wines, as these wines will rest on the lees only for a matter of days or weeks, rather than the months or years seen in our traditional method wines. Occasionally, winemakers will stir lees to add body, yet even in these cases, the autolytic characteristics will be minimal. A different method that excludes second fermentation is the Asti method. Created near the town of Asti in the Piedmont region of Italy, this is a variation of the tank method, and it is used for wines made from Moscato. It is a single, partial fermentation. Using an unfermented grape juice as a base, yeast is added and partial fermentation begins. It's then stopped by chilling and removing yeast via filtration when the wine reaches about 7% alcohol. At this stage, our pressure is lower with just a slight effervescence requiring only a screw cap for sealing. And there's residual sugar. Moscato d'Asti wines are sweet, lightly sparkling, and refreshing with pronounced intensity. Please note that Moscato d'Asti differs from still Moscatos and fortified Muscats. Finally, carbonation. This will be the least expensive method. Simply put, CO2 is injected into a still wine. Typically, this method is seen in inexpensive wines and can be made in large quantities. Sweetness levels and grape varieties play an important role in sparkling wines, so some labeling terms can help consumers identify what those styles may be. The scale used for the EU sweetness levels are testable, usually in multiple choice questions. So let's take some notes. Brut Nature or zero dosage has no sugar allowed in the dosage, resulting in 0 to 3 grams per liter. Extra Brut has 0 to 6 grams, where Brut, which is our most common champagne style, can have anywhere from 0 to 12 grams per liter. Extra Sec or Extra Trocken has 12 to 17 grams. Sec is 17 to 32, and Demi-Sec will be notably sweet with 32 to 50 grams per liter. The terms extra or demi can sometimes trip people up, yours truly included. So if it helps, demi means half. So I associate our dosing levels of sugar closer to half of our liqueur d'expedition. And finally, doux, dolce, or sweet will be the sweetest style with 50 or more grams per liter of sugar. Just straight up sweet. Next, let's look at some terminologies regarding grapes. Non-vintage will indicate that grapes from multiple vintages were used in a base blend, while vintage wines require all grapes harvested from one single year. Blanc de Blanc is 100% white grapes, while Blanc de Noir would be 100% black grapes. There are a few different options for rosé sparkling wines. These can be made through blending red and white varieties or a short maceration. In our next video, we will look more closely at the sparkling wines of the world, their styles, and more specific labeling terms. Let's recap. The journey from a still base wine to a sparkling creation is one of careful control and method. The foundation is the base wine using grapes with lower sugar levels, high acidity, and fresh fruit flavors. This still dry wine sets the stage for secondary fermentation that creates bubbles. We have looked at the 6 primary ways to create effervescence, each leaving its unique stamp on our final product. By understanding the cause and effect of each method, from the cost-intensive riddling of the traditional method to the fruit-forward results of a tank method, we can fully appreciate the vast stylistic diversity across the world of bubbles. Be prepared to differentiate these methods and their effect in a wine's final style in your studies. Thank you for joining me. Cheers!